The air was strangely still that afternoon, heavy with a kind of tension I couldn't name. The Hawthorne estate, once a name whispered with awe in our town, was as grand and intimidating as I remembered. Iron gates, a long cobblestone driveway, manicured hedges so perfect they looked fake. I hadn't been here in over a decade, and now, suddenly, I was summoned. I almost turned around twice on the drive up. When I reached the door, a maid I didn't recognize opened it with a soft nod and led me through the house like I was some distant royal cousin. Everything was pristine, expensive, and cold. And then, there she was, Eleanor Hawthorne, my grandmother, sitting upright on a white wicker chair in the middle of her rose garden, a delicate porcelain teacup in her gloved hand, and wearing a wide, brimmed hat like she'd stepped out of a painting. "Ava," she said with the faintest smile, "so glad you could make time. I didn't know what to say." I hadn't spoken to her in over 14 years. I wasn't sure if I should come. I admitted. She gestured to the chair opposite hers. "And yet here you are." We sat in silence for a few minutes, the clink of her spoon against the cup the only sound. The scent of blooming roses filled the air, but I couldn't relax. Then, without warning, she asked, "How do you spend your $3 million trust fund?" The question hit like a slap. I blinked my, what? Her expression didn't change. If anything, she seemed surprised at my confusion. "Your trust fund, darling, the one Thomas set up for you when you were born. Thomas, my grandfather." I felt my chest tighten. "There's no trust fund. I don't have money. I'm working 2 jobs and living in a shoebox apartment with peeling paint." Eleanor set her cup down slowly. "That's not possible." "Well, it's reality. She studied me like I was a painting she couldn't make sense of." I shifted uncomfortably in my seat. "When your grandfather passed, the trust was supposed to stay untouched until you were 21. I had it legally locked. I remember signing the documents. Thomas insisted you be protected." I almost laughed, but there was nothing funny about any of this. I didn't even know he remembered me. I said, "He died when I was 8. The only thing I remember is him calling me Little Star." Eleanor's face softened for the first time. I saw something that wasn't cold calculation. "Of course he remembered you," she whispered. "You were his favorite." The wind rustled the rose bushes. I looked around, still unsure why I was here. "I'm sorry," I said after a moment, "but I think you've got the wrong person. Maybe it was meant for Victoria. She's always been the golden child." Eleanor's mouth twitched at the name. "Victoria has always taken more than she gives." That was an understatement. My cousin Victoria had lived her whole life bathed in luxury, designer clothes before she could walk, private tutors, debutante balls. Last I heard, she was jet, setting across Europe, posting selfies from yachts and sipping champagne in Monaco. I tried not to look at her accounts anymore. It only reminded me of everything I wasn't allowed to have. "She told me you and your mother cut ties with the family." Eleanor said suddenly, "Cut ties?" I scoffed. "We were pushed out." I hadn't meant to sound bitter, but it slipped. My mother had tried so hard to keep me connected to my father's side. But after he left, his family went silent. No letters, no birthdays, no help. We were erased. My mother stopped talking about it eventually. "Said it hurt too much. I see now," Eleanor murmured. "I should have looked into it myself. You think." The words were out before I could stop them. I expected her to get angry, but instead she looked tired. I was grieving Thomas. I trusted Veronica and Robert to handle things fairly. I didn't realize. Her voice trailed off, a rare crack in the armor. I looked away, overwhelmed. "I came because you asked, but if this is a mistake, I really should go." She held up a hand. "Wait," I paused. "Let me look into it," she said. "Give me a few days if I'm wrong, if there really is nothing. I won't bother you again." I stood slowly. "All right, but don't expect me to hold my breath." She didn't smile, but she nodded. As I walked back through the towering halls of the Hawthorne estate, I felt the weight of ghosts I didn't remember and expectations I didn't ask for. And as I drove home, Eleanor's question echoed in my mind. How do you spend your $3 million trust fund? If I had one, why didn't I know? And if I didn't, why would she think I did? I barely slept the night after my visit to the Hawthorne estate. My mind raced with impossible thoughts, old memories, and questions that refused to quiet. A trust fund. Millions? Why would someone hide something like that? By the third day, I cracked. I walked into the kitchen and dropped my keys on the counter. "Mom, we need to talk." She looked up from her cup of tea, startled by the serious tone. "Ava, what's wrong?" I went to see Grandma Eleanor. Her face froze. She asked me how I'm spending my $3 million trust fund. I added. The mug slipped from her hands, shattering against the tile. She didn't move, just stared at the pieces. "So it's true," I said quietly. "There was a trust fund." My mother sank into the nearest chair. Her eyes brimmed with tears, but she blinked them away. "I was hoping you'd never have to know." "Why?" "I've been living off ramen noodles for 4 years." She ran a hand through her graying hair, sighing heavily, because knowing wouldn't have changed anything. I didn't have the power to fight them. Fight who? Your Aunt Veronica and Robert, your cousin Victoria too when she got older. After your grandfather passed, he left that trust in your name. It was all official, locked like Eleanor said. But then the lawyers changed, documents disappeared. I tried to speak up, but no one would listen. You let them take it, I said, voice sharp with hurt. She looked up at me, eyes wet but firm. "I was raising you alone. They cut off everything, no support, no calls. I didn't have their money. I didn't have their lawyers. I thought if I stayed quiet, maybe they'd leave us alone. They did," I said bitterly, "right along with the money." 2 days later, I was back at the Hawthorne estate. Eleanor didn't say anything when I arrived. She simply gestured for me to follow her into the study. The old oak, paneled room smelled of paper, dust, and roses. Her lawyer was already waiting, Mr. Calloway, an old man with a voice like gravel and a briefcase that looked older than me. He placed a thick file on the table between us. "This is the original trust established by Mr. Thomas Hawthorne in 2002. Beneficiary, Ava Morgan, irrevocable, terms, full access at age 21. I nodded slowly, feeling the weight of the pages. "So what happened?" Mr. Calloway flipped to a set of newer pages. "In 2010, the trustees were changed. 2 new names were added, Veronica Hawthorne and Victoria Hawthorne. A power of attorney document was submitted, allegedly signed by Ava Morgan's mother." Eleanor leaned forward. "Did you sign anything like that?" I shook my head. "Never." Mr. Calloway pulled out the signature page. "I didn't think so. This has already been flagged as a forgery." The air turned ice cold. "Since then," he continued, "there have been steady withdrawals, a few $100,000 here, some property investments there. The trust currently holds just under $400,000. My stomach dropped. "They stole it," I whispered. "They stole nearly $3 million. Legally, yes," Mr. Calloway said, "but we can reverse it." Eleanor stood up, her voice steel. "Begin proceedings immediately. I want them exposed. But that will tear apart the family," Mr. Calloway warned. Her eyes burned with something I didn't expect. Fury. "It already is. I won't let my husband's name be used to fund liars and thieves." That night, I sat with Eleanor in the rose garden again. She was quieter than before, but not cold. "I failed you," she said softly. "You didn't know." I replied, "I should have. Thomas always said Victoria was greedy. I thought he was being dramatic. She's been living like a princess," I said bitterly. While I was picking up extra shifts to buy textbooks, Eleanor reached out and placed her hand on mine. It was the first time she'd ever touched me without ceremony. "Then it's time to take back what's yours." Over the next few weeks, the quiet battle began. Eleanor had her lawyers gather every document, every record, every piece of evidence. She moved like a queen at war, graceful, composed, and absolutely ruthless. And for the first time, I saw her not as some cold, untouchable matriarch, but as a woman who had been silenced in her own way too. She was mentoring me, I could feel it. She taught me how to read contracts, how to look people in the eye when they lied, and how to keep my dignity when the truth felt like a knife. Victoria remained blissfully unaware, until the day the official inquiry landed in her inbox. She showed up at the estate 3 days later, stomping into the drawing room like a storm in stilettos. "You're accusing me." Eleanor barely looked up from her book. "You forged documents, Victoria." "I didn't forge anything. It was Mother's idea. And anyway, Ava wasn't even part of this family anymore. She is my granddaughter." Victoria scoffed. "Now she is, please. This little charity case shows up and suddenly you're rewriting the will." Eleanor's eyes turned sharp. "Careful, dear, you're not indispensable." Victoria turned to me, seething. "This was your plan, wasn't it?" "No," I said quietly. "But it's my money, my future. You had no right." She laughed bitterly. "You think you're one of us now, wearing second-hand jeans and sipping tea in my grandmother's garden." Eleanor's voice sliced through the air. "My garden, and if I recall, you were never invited to tea. You simply took it." Victoria's face flushed red, but she turned and stormed out. I didn't smile, I didn't gloat, because this wasn't revenge. Not yet. This was just truth. But truth, I was learning, had its own quiet power. And I had only just begun to wield it. The air in the rose garden was different now, less cold, less formal. Eleanor had started inviting me every Saturday. No more stiff greetings or veiled comments about posture or appearance. Just quiet talks, long walks among the blooming white roses, and fresh tea served by a maid who had started smiling at me, like I belonged. Maybe for the first time I did. "So," Eleanor said one morning, cutting a scone with slow precision, "tell me what you'd do with $3 million. I paused, a little unsure. "Honestly," I said, "pay off my mother's debts, give her back some peace, then maybe open a community art center, something for kids like me who didn't grow up with ballet lessons and gallery openings." She raised a perfectly groomed brow. "Not a yacht, a house in Milan." I smiled. "I can barely afford gas. I'd settle for a car that doesn't scream when it turns left." She laughed, a rare sound, sharp but sincere. "You are your grandfather's child," she said softly. "He believed in building things that lasted." We sat in silence a while, the roses swaying gently in the breeze. She looked tired. The illness was creeping in now, slowly stealing her breath, though she never admitted it aloud. "Are you scared?" I asked finally. "Of dying," she said. "No, of what will happen after I'm gone." "Yes," I nodded. "They'll come for everything, won't they?" "They already are," she said, "but they won't get it." Her eyes met mine. "Because I have you." Over the next few weeks, our relationship deepened. Eleanor took me under her wing like a queen grooming her heir. She began showing me things: how to read financial statements, how to analyze stocks, even how to handle polite sabotage at board meetings. I learned quickly, absorbing it all. I wanted to be ready, not just to defend what was mine, but to finally become something more than a forgotten name in a forged document. One afternoon, she handed me a worn leather ledger. Inside were pages and pages of old notes in faded ink. "Your grandfather kept journals," she said. "He believed you'd be the one to carry on the Hawthorne name, not Robert, not Victoria." I traced the handwriting with my fingers. There, in delicate loops, he'd written things like Ava's future fund, invest for education and independence. He'd thought of me. All this time, I blinked hard. He believed in me, more than anyone ever has. Eleanor said. Meanwhile, Victoria's world began to crack. She tried to spin the legal inquiry as a misunderstanding, but documents didn't lie. Her social media went dark. Rumors started at her country club. A luxury condo she claimed to own was suddenly up for sale. We didn't attack publicly. We didn't need to. Quiet legal pressure did the work, but revenge wasn't what I wanted. Not exactly. What I wanted was legacy. Elena knew this, and one day she surprised me with something more powerful than money. She took me to the old family office downtown, a grand glass building that loomed like a monument. "This," she said, "will be yours." I stared at the building, stunned. "I'm rewriting my will," she continued. "They'll scream, they'll threaten, but they won't win. I've given Victoria enough chances to show character. She failed everyone. I don't want to be the villain," I said quietly. She touched my shoulder. "Then don't be. Let them do that part. You just focus on the future." We sat down that afternoon with her attorney. I watched her sign page after page, her hand a little shaky, but her voice strong. When it was done, she slid a sealed envelope across the table. "Open this after I'm gone," she said, and no sooner. The envelope was thick, marked with the Hawthorne family crest. "I trust you, Ava," she said. "I should have long ago." I nodded, tucking the envelope into my purse. "I won't let you down." A week later, Elena was hospitalized. The call came just after midnight. I rushed to the private suite where she lay, pale and small in a sea of white sheets. She looked at me and smiled faintly. "You came?" "Of course I did." "I didn't think I'd care this much," she whispered. "But I do." I sat beside her, holding her hand. "You're not done yet." I whispered. She smiled again, eyes glinting. "Oh, Ava, I finished the moment you walked through those gates." Her fingers tightened around mine. "Don't let them shame you into silence. What was taken from you, take it back, but with grace, always with grace, I promise." She nodded once. "Then I can rest." She passed away 2 days later. I sat in the rose garden for hours, holding the unopened envelope. Everything was quiet now. The war was about to begin, but I wasn't afraid anymore, because this wasn't just about revenge. It was about building something beautiful from the wreckage, and I had Eleanor's blessing. I had her name. And I had the truth.